This is Pod Populi, podcasts for the people.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to replace professional medical advice or be a substitute for therapy. Please contact a mental health professional as needed. If you are in need of urgent or emergency health care, please contact your medical and or mental health provider, call 911, or go to your nearest emergency room. The information presented in this podcast does not reflect the opinions of those with whom Dr. Ellick might be affiliated as an employee, consultant, or colleague, past or present. Hello, and welcome to another episode of From Mayhem to Mindset with Dr. Laura. I am your host, Dr. Laura Ellick. It's a beautiful day here in Florida, in South Florida. I hope you guys are having an amazing day as well. I have an incredible guest. I know I say that all the time. All of my guests are incredible, but I'm really biased with this guest because I've known him. I would have to say I know him all his life because he's my son. So when we're talking about mindset, one of the people who I keep in my mind is actually my son, Owen. So let me tell you a little bit about Owen, and then we'll get into a conversation. Owen is I can't even say a kid because he's a young adult now. He is a young adult who is just a phenomenon. So if you want to talk about mindset, this is the kid who is the definition of putting your mind to work for you. And so we can have so many different stories of what he has done in his life to be determined to get to his goals and where he is now. But right now he is a junior at SUNY Geneseo. So for people who don't understand the acronym, it's State University of New York at Geneseo, which is probably as far north as you can get without going into Canada, or close enough. He is a junior. As I said, he is majoring in data analytics and with a minor in finance. Is that correct, Owen?
Yeah, that's correct.
That's correct. So, but here's what's really cool. He's also a lacrosse player and he was a football player. He's played a lot of different sports. And we haven't really had an athlete on this show to really talk about the mindset of becoming an athlete. And not only that, but he's a student athlete. So you have the challenges of trying to have a so-called normal college experience along with the being an athlete part. And so if you've ever seen on TikTok or on Instagram the memes about just the revolving door of being an athlete, where it's like sleep, eat, practice, go to class, sleep, eat, practice, and repeat. That's it. But, I'm going to let Owen tell a little bit of his story about how he came into being an athlete. And we're going to talk, Owen, a little bit going deep into your injury that you had at the end of your freshman year, because that's really where I saw your mindset really click. There were a couple of times in your life where I've really seen it. But at that point in time, I really saw a determination in you to go beyond what I think maybe you even thought that you were capable of. So just tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about your interest in sports, how all of that started for you, and when you really decided you wanted to be a college athlete.
I think my interest in sports kind of started right at the beginning of my life. I started sports when I was like 4 years old. Just kind of my older brother played sports. My dad played hockey growing up. My mom played soccer, right? So it's kind of like in the family. I started with football. I would say it was probably the first sport I played. I did a little bit of like soccer and then some like baseball, but those kind of never really stuck with me. It was always football, and then I got into lacrosse like fairly quickly after that. And I think like when you're young and you're playing all these PAL sports, it's very fun. It's a life outside of like school and just like being a kid. And so I think that's kind of I think more so the when I decided I wanted to be a college athlete was more so though like middle school. I think you start seeing like the way you developing as an athlete, the way like you could see things paying off from getting extra shots or whatever it was, and then just kind of like being able to pursue that in college is kind of like a reward, I would say.
One of the things I think is really interesting about any athlete, and I saw this with you also, the athletes who go from good to great are the ones who put in the work, not just in the practice, but outside of practice. And so, what I remember from you, and I know that you still do it, is even when practice was over, or when you were bored, or when nothing was going on, you would go outside and you would either shoot hoops, or you would run around with your friends and throw the football. You would just take lacrosse balls and just, shoot at the net. When you were a face-off guy, you would practice face-offs in your room. So to what extent was that you practicing being good to great versus I was just bored and figured this was something to do?
Well, I think as almost any like college athlete, high school athlete knows that when you do take time and you kind of like look at the intricacies of your game, whether it be, you know, your shooting, your dodging, your footwork, anything, like if you really hammer down on one principal concept and you work at it over and over and over, you're gonna improve on it. But I think like on top of that, it was more so like an escape. You just when you have a ball in your hands, a stick in your hands, a football thrown around, you're not really worried about anything else, right? And obviously, I'm a very anxious person, so I'm always like looking ahead, looking ahead, looking ahead. But the sports is what keeps me in the moment, in the present. So, if I'm frustrated about something or sad, happy, whatever it may be, it's a way to kind of get out of that and stop looking ahead and be present in the moment.
That's super important that you just said that because that's where the mindset piece really comes in. Because you can make a choice in your life. When people are feeling anxious, when they're feeling depressed, when they're feeling all kinds of things, a lot of times people go for distractions that are quick and easy, but maybe unhealthy, whether it's drugs, whether it's alcohol, whatever it happens to be. So you learned very early on that you could shut out the rest of the world if you just focused on face offs
Hmm.
or taking shots or whatever. So that was like a coping skill that you developed.
Yep. Hmm.
So when did you make the I'm sorry, go ahead.
And similarly with that, the gym is another way to kind of just let everything off your chest. You just kind of in there, whether it's hour, hour and a half, whatever you need to be in there for, and just kind of like release everything from the day or past week or whatever it may be.
Mhm. So for people out there who are having a really hard time finding a good coping strategy, I tell my patients all the time to get out of their head and into their body. So I'll tell people just drop and do 15 push-ups, right? Just do it in your office. Nobody needs to see. They don't have to be great push-ups, but you really came to that. Did someone teach you that, or did you come to that on your own?
Well, I mean, it's kind of started in, like you said, like with dropping and doing push-ups. I think I started doing like bedroom workouts, so to speak, at like night, and kind of you just like, I mean, you and Dad had a lot of like just like random workout equipment, whether it be like push-up paddles or just random dumbbells laying around. So I would just kind of like mess around with those. But then you just kind of like you see what it can do for you, and it starts with those 50 push-ups, then it goes to 100 push-ups, and then it goes to sit-ups and pull-ups, and then you start realizing like maybe I should get a gym membership, and it just like compounds from there. And it really is a great way for anybody to just kind of get out of their own head and do what they need to.
No, what's really interesting is, sports is obviously a big part of your identity, but also academics was a big part of your identity too. And obviously, I have to tell this story. It's going to be cringy. You're going to be mad at me, but we have to talk about the bagel breakfast because I think that just epitomizes Owen. Is I think it might have been like in eighth grade where you found out that if you get like a 4.0, you get a bagel breakfast your senior year of high school. And so we used to joke about that was going to be your motivation to get all A's was to get the bagel breakfast. And I remember you used to actually say, I got to study for this test because I want the bagel breakfast. But, that's turning an external reward into something internal because at some point in time, you actually started saying, I don't really care about the bagel breakfast. Like I really just want to do well. So when did that switch happen and what was that for you?
Well, I think with anything, it starts with having an external motivator, right? And then once you get so like consumed by what you're doing, you realize like I don't need that external motivator because now I've built discipline. And that's with anything, right? It starts out with motivation, whether it's to get out of bed in the morning, but then you do it, it becomes a habit, and you no longer need that motivation because it's discipline, it's in your brain now, it's what you do. And so I think, like, freshman and sophomore year was like, you know, I had that in the back of my mind, and then junior and senior year, you're getting more serious with sports, you're getting more serious with everything else. So you didn't even have time to think about that. It's just like I've been doing it for so long that it's now in my brain that I want to do well in everything. And it's just setting a precedent that that will continue with me through college and even in out of college in the workplace.
You made so many really good points that I want to highlight, but for people who are curious, yes, he did get the bagel breakfast. Was it worth it?
Yeah, of course. It's you just
Were they good bagels, or were they substandard bagels, or were they really good New York bagels?
I mean, they were pretty good bagels, but it was more so it wasn't even about the bagel at that point. It was just the fact that I was able to see everything that I did to get up to that point laid out in front of me, and I was like, wow, like yeah, I set my mind on this and I got it.
So that's the internal motivation, right? External turns to internal, which is what we tell people all the time who are recovering from addiction or eating disorders or anything else is, yeah, you may wind up in treatment because your parents made you go or the judge made you go. But if you really want it to stick and develop the life that you want, that external has to turn into internal. And you made like this really important point that I've heard other people talk about too, is motivation is great, but there are a lot of times where you're not motivated. And that's where discipline takes over.
Hmm.
Because what's ultimately reinforcing is how good you feel afterwards. So even if you're not motivated, has there ever been a time where you went to the gym and afterwards you were like, that sucked. I wish I hadn't done that.
Not so much I wish I hadn't done that, but more of the yeah, that sucked. And I think a lot of people who you can ask anybody in the gym community, an athlete, whatever it may be, like you just got to get yourself there. Once you're
Get
there,
yourself
even
there.
even if you have the worst workout, you were there, you did it, you did more than most people would. So that's kind of
Right. So you give yourself the credit for having gone, even if it
mhm,
wasn't the greatest workout.
yes. Hmm.
So tell us a little bit about your ACL injury.
Yeah, so it was the summer of going into my sophomore year in college. It was a summer league game, it's very kind of lackadaisical, you play, but you still play hard. But I just kind of got wrapped up in the wrong play and just felt a little pop in my knee and I was kind of in pain and I kind of knew something was up, but you go into that first stage of denial where you just kind of like wishing it's something else or kind of like saying maybe like, oh, maybe it's not as bad as I think. And then, once that like MRI came back, it sunk in and I was upset for sure. But I think at the end of the day, I just knew like I mean, nobody's going to feel bad for me, right? I can't feel bad for myself. Nobody is going to feel bad that this happened because at the end of the day, life goes on. Everybody else's lives are going to go on. I just know that I have to come back from this better, stronger, faster, just kind of blow my old self out of the water because, like, you're going to get hurt, things are going to happen, but it's the way you respond to the adversity. So,
Mhm. And that's really the purpose of this show too, is from mayhem to mindset, which if you listen to the first episode, which you probably didn't, but I'll send you a meme about it, which is what I do all the time. And Owen is no, I can't say he's the only one of my kids who laughs at my memes, but he is consistently the one who responds to my memes. Um, yeah, from mayhem to mindset is really when you're in chaos, like Eminem says, you have a choice,
mhm,
right? You can go in either direction. And so he's a really good role model, and we can talk about my love for Eminem forever. But you're really saying the same thing. And what's really interesting is we all felt bad. Like we all
mhm,
felt bad for you. And at the time, you couldn't accept it. I think it was
mhm,
so hard for you. and tell me if I'm wrong. Like you have this mindset of I'm just going to do what I'm going to do. So don't anybody like give me any emotion because it may distract me from what I have to do. Like, is
Hmm.
that kind of it?
Yeah. Hmm.
You went into focus mindset.
Yep. Yep. And it's funny. I have kind of like two things here. Is one of my all-time favorite quotes right now is I saw this on TikTok, and it's through adversity comes profit, and the profit piece is not money, it's the profit of life, right? Anytime you're going through something, you're always going to come out with a greater appreciation of something that money can't buy, or a gift that money can't buy, and that's whatever you just went through. Like for example, my knee, I went through that and I became a ton more grateful for just everything, what life, being out on the field, everything. But not only that, my body went through a complete transformation. I was stronger, I was faster, I was better, and all that downtime, I had my stick in my hand. So the only thing I was doing was playing wall ball, playing catch, doing all that stuff all throughout my recovery. So my stick skills got better, everything got better. So that's what I mean when I say that. Um, there's always a light in the dark, if that makes sense.
So that's really interesting to appreciate your body also because, I remember like you could not do even going to the bathroom or taking a shower was like such a thing. It was like, I don't even want to do it. But you committed 100% to your recovery. Like you were doing rehab even before the surgery.
Hmm.
So did you have an idea in your head that, okay, I'm not sure where this is going, but I'm going to make sure that I come back stronger? Or were you just like, I just really hope that I can play again? Like, where was your head at?
Oh, my head was from the start, I'm gonna come back from this stronger, because you don't just want to pray or hope that you're gonna come back. You want to pray and hope that you're gonna come back better, but it's not just gonna be handed to you on a silver platter. You gotta work for that. And to your point with like everything was difficult, right? Like it was a very humbling experience getting in and out of the shower. I remember I had a medical stool in the shower, wrapping my leg with a garbage bag just so I was able to shower, right? It's those little things that that make up the bigger journey of the whole entire experience.
And you really recognize how much independence can be important. I think we might have lost him. Here he is.
Yep.
Okay, he's back. You really realize how independence is so important. And really thinking about it, you got to a position where I had to cook for you, which nobody ever wants. And you actually made it through and you were kind of like, listen, mom, I'll take over this part because like you can't cook. But you did it, right? And so looking back on it now, I think it probably is hard for most people to say, I'm so happy this happened to me, but it looks like you can find this silver lining of how this was a benefit to you.
Yeah, I wouldn't go back.
You
I
wouldn't go
mean,
back. So what would you tell other people?
I think like for other people that have this happen, it's gonna suck. The first 24 hours, it's gonna suck. The entire 9 months, 12 months is gonna suck. But in that suck, you have to find something that brings you back to yourself, and that in the end, you're gonna come out with a greater appreciation for like why you did everything that you did. Because there are going to be people that go through this, and they're not going to be as diligent with it. They're not going to be as like routinely scheduled and driven. And yeah, those people will, sure, they'll recover. They'll make their waves as normal people would. But it's the people that crush their rehab every day, do exactly what their therapists say, and doing things outside of therapy, whether it be like reading for your mental health, right? Because that injury is more of a mental injury than it is a physical one. So,
So tell us about that.
yeah, I mean, it breaks you down. There's good days and there's bad days. There might be a day where your rehab goes phenomenal and you're on the top of the world. And then there's another day where, you had the worst day of your life. You're in pain, you're suffering, but again, like you got to kind of ride the highs and lows. You can't let the highs get too high, and you can't let the lows get too low. You kind of got to coast. And I think that's a very important thing that people fail to recognize with this stuff, is that it's mainly mental. And it's like there are days your mind's gonna say like I don't want to do it today. But, then you're one day behind you where you should be. And that's kind of what happened. I mean, that definitely happened to me at some point.
So it's always moving forward, moving forward. Did
Hmm.
you have an intention at the time? Because usually this injury, they say it's about a year before
Hmm.
you're really back on your feet. But you were doing really well after like 8 months,
Hmm.
really? Maybe even a little sooner. Did you have an intention? Yeah, they say it's a year. I'm going to do it in 8 months.
Yeah, I definitely did. I mean,
I knew
um,
it. I knew it.
I ended up playing in a game at 9 months. But then after that, I was very sore, and then I kind of knew that maybe it wasn't the right time. But once I got closer to that year mark, I noticed that things were a lot better. So I'm not saying it's not feasible for someone to come back from it early, but I think it's your body, and you have to gauge your own body and what you feel is right. Some people might be able to do that recovery in 6 months, 7 months. Others, it might take a year and a half, right? You got to find your balance for your body.
So, would you say that there are any particular authors or speakers or people who have influenced your mindset, who you look to when you're like, I need a shot of something, some inspiration?
I don't know if you could see this, but this is the book I have right
Oh,
on
David.
my, yep.
So, as you were saying, David Goggins is a big inspiration for you.
Yes, of course, yeah.
Where were you first introduced to him?
I would probably say social media for sure. I think everybody is introduced to everybody on social media, but I think I saw some of his stuff on TikTok, Instagram, and I was like, wow, like this guy's been through something. And then I think for maybe it was Christmas, I asked for his books, and I got his books, and I read the first one, and that was just like a phenomenal read. I recommend it to anybody struggling with anything, or even if you're not struggling, it's just a phenomenal read.
Now, is the one that you held up, is that his first book?
That's his second book.
That his
Mhm.
second book, but the first
Yes.
one really hit you. Was there anything about that first book, a phrase or anything that jumped out at you?
Mainly his backstory. I mean, his
Mhm.
just like the way the challenges he navigated, and then growing up, he was very obese. He was working as like an exterminator, and he was like, I kind of need to change my life around, and so he joined the Navy, and they were like, you're overweight, like we're not accepting you, and they gave him a very thin deadline to cut down, and he made it, and they took a chance on him, and um, the rest is history.
That would be awesome if he actually saw this video. Let's get it out there. Let's hope he sees this video so we can get him on here, because there are a lot of people who say that he's too extreme. What do you think about that?
Um, I mean, he's doing what he loves, right? If people deem it extreme, who the hell cares, you know? He's finding what he finds satisfaction in, and if it's running 100 miles, then maybe that's not extreme to him. Maybe it's just extreme to someone who's looking from the outside, you know? Who am I to
Good
call
point.
someone else extreme when I'm not living his lifestyle, you know?
Good point. Good point. So I have to ask this as we start to wrap up, because I've talked about this in other podcast episodes, is always telling you kids before you left for the day to be a leader, not a follower. Did that
Mhm.
do anything for you, or was I just saying that for nothing?
No, of course. I still say it now. I think it's very important to kind of be your own mind, be your own person, and kind of set an example. I mean, even right now, just like we have obviously a freshman class come in, and they don't know what to do in college, so it's leading them, setting the precedent for them, so that they could do it for the next class, and it follows a tradition of culture, and that's really where culture is built.
So you have the opportunity to pass on already what you've learned to
Mhm.
the so-called younger generation, right?
Yeah. Hmm. Definitely.
Yeah. So what's in the future for you? Tell us where you're going to be.
Well, I'm in school for another 2 years, but hopefully after that I can find some work.
Hmm. And where are you looking? What's your ideal dream job?
My dream job would probably be an analyst for a sports team. Any
Okay,
maybe
you hear that, people? You hear that, people? Jets?
Jets, MLB, NFL, NHL, whatever organization wants me, they'll they'll be getting someone with fire, that's for sure.
That is absolutely for sure. And tell everybody where they can tune in to the Geneseo Knights game for people who want to watch
Uh,
you.
right on the website, if you go to the men's lacrosse and you filter it over to the schedule, there's links to watch the games, and our next game is actually tomorrow, Wednesday, and that will be against Ithaca.
Awesome. And that's SUNY, SUNY Geneseo, right? People can just
Yep.
Google that and look it up and find you.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Owen, for joining us today on From Mayhem to Mindset. Any last parting words before we wrap?
Just be great.
Be great. Be a leader, not a follower, and it's all about the mindset. Thanks so much, Owen.
Yep.
Glad to have you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for another episode of From Mayhem to Mindset. Don't forget, we will be back next week, but it's all about the mindset. Thanks for joining us on From Mayhem to Mindset. If you found today's episode helpful, be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and leave a 5-star review. It really helps spread the message. Want to dive deeper? Check out my book, Wisdom from the Universe, available now on Amazon. And if you're looking for a speaker to inspire and transform, I'd love to connect. Visit www.lauraellick.com to learn more. Remember, you don't have to just survive, you can thrive. See you next time.